So I think we're live, Nick. How exciting.
It is. Hi, Lisa, and hi, everyone who's watching. I don't even know what day it is. Happy Tuesday evening.
Happy Tuesday. Thank you so much for joining us. And I want to say hello to everybody who's watching on Facebook. Thank you for joining us in our Facebook Live conversation with LAUSD board member Nick Melvoin, who actually was just reelected by his fellow board members as vice president of the board. So congrats, Nick.
Thank you. Appreciate
Yeah.
that.
And we will be talking about what's in store for special ed for the upcoming year. And we have two major things that happened in the past week, which I'm super excited to talk with you about. One is that the board president, Kelly Gonez, put forth a resolution co-sponsored by you about fully funding I.D.E.A, which is something I've been ranting and raving about for a while now, and I'm sure plenty of other folks have too. So I'm super excited about that. And then also what everyone's buzzing about is the new superintendent, Alberto Carvalho. So exciting. He sounds like a hero from a Greek myth. I mean, he was knighted by Spain for
Don Alberto is what I've come to call him.
Don Alberto
with his new knighthood. But yeah,
so it's so exciting. So he has a reputation for being a very powerful and innovative leader in education. He has gained a lot of fame for his work in Miami, and that's exciting to hear. Especially, it seems that he has had a big commitment to students who are English learners, etc. But I guess the question relevant to Sped Up is, what do you know about his commitment to special education?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks again for having me. It is an exciting day as the board unanimously selected Mr. Carvalho to come to Los Angeles, where he will begin no later than March 1st. We're hoping to get him here in February. I do, as you alluded to, Lisa, he has a track record of success in Miami. He's been at the helm for nearly 14 years. And as I said in our press conference today, like superintendent years are like dog years. My tenure on the board, we've had 4 or 5, if you count some interims. So the fact that he's been there for nearly 14 years, I think, demonstrates a commitment to the work that I know he's going to show to LA as well. It was interesting because I was talking to some folks in his orbit about who he was and just some tips and tricks. And somebody who served alongside him for a very long time mentioned that his particular affinity is for students who are English learners and immigrants like he was, but also for students with special needs, which was interesting because I know that there have been parents who have expressed some concerns. We don't know as much about his commitment to students with disabilities. And I do just want to say this person did not know that I was talking to Sped Up, but they said in the last 48 hours, this is a priority of his. He's been committed to serving these students as during his tenure in Miami. He recently introduced a targeted reading success academy for students with disabilities in his most recent 21-22 plan to accelerate student performance, specifically calling out gaps for students with disabilities and committing to closing them. He's focused on transition services for young adults with disabilities in partnership with adult education to enhance post-secondary opportunities. I'm proud to represent some CTC centers in my district, but as we think about those transition services, it's something that he's had to focus on. And I believe he'll bring creative and innovative ideas to best meet the needs of students with disabilities at LA Unified. I think that we have been working on some exciting initiatives, whether that's the move towards inclusion or others, but we haven't had the urgency that we've needed. We've still been, as I've said many times to this group and others, we've been way too compliance oriented. And this goes back to my days. I'm sure I've relayed the story, but when I was a teacher in the district, I remember getting called to the office because they needed an English teacher. And when I got there, they said, "Oh, we need you to sit in this meeting for the student's IEP." I said, "I've never met this student." And they said, "Oh, well, we just need a general ed teacher." And I said, "I will not sit here and just check a box when I don't know this kid." And I feel like we still haven't really emerged from that compliance-based culture. I think that Mr. Carvalho has a demonstrated commitment to this, and I'm excited to work with him to really accelerate learning and opportunities for our students with special needs.
Well, that sounds very hopeful, and I appreciate your commitment and not just sitting in there on that IEP meeting for the student you'd never met, so they could check that compliance box. Well, we had a gen ed teacher there, all taken care of. I would love a future LAUSD that really just leans hard into addressing the whole child and really doing right by kids. It's kind of what was that Fauci quote? I don't know how to explain to you that you need to care about people.
He was still trying.
I want to take that and just kind of apply that to special ed kids. Um, there have been many instances over the years where LAUSD seems to have struggled to really offer free, appropriate public education to students with disabilities. And I'm wondering, are there opportunities that you foresee in working with Mr. Or future Superintendent Carvalho in really assuring full support for students with disabilities?
I do. I am. You said it best. I am helpful. I'm hopeful that he will be helpful. And I think that it's interesting because you take FAPE and you break it apart. I mean, the free part is important, and I think I've said this to parents, but often I'm told by parents, well, LA Unified tells us that we have to sue the school district to get the services that we need, and we know that not every parent has the opportunity to find a lawyer and sue the district. So I definitely want us to move away from this combative relationship. I'm proud of the work that we did collectively with parents, with advocates to get us out from under the consent decree, but we can't then abandon this commitment and still be nervous that parents are going to somehow be adversarial. I think the parents that I talk to, the parents that reach out to my office are always collaborative in nature. They just want a partner. They want someone to help navigate this very complex district for students with exceptional needs. They want to have a voice in the conversation. And they just, above all, want their students to be successful. And that's something I share. I know something Superintendent Carvalho shares. And so, whether it's through the work we're trying to do around parent collaboration, we've talked with this group and others about an ombudsman for the district, or finding out the right balance between our Communities of Schools initiative and our central office when it comes to students with disabilities. I think that's one of the challenges across the board, and it's something I'd like our superintendent to tackle, which is you've got the school site, the community of schools, the local district, the central office. Then you have various departments like special education or like the Office of General Counsel. And parents just feel lost. And so this idea of parent navigators or something is something I remain committed to. But I do think we need to work collaboratively. I also think that the district needs to have the humility to acknowledge when we're not doing something well. And we struggled, along with districts around the world, to serve kids well online, particularly vulnerable students and students with disabilities. If you were a student with visual impairment, it was almost impossible. I have Van Ness and I was just at Van Ness last Friday morning, and Van Ness has a program for students with visual impairments. It's almost impossible to do this over Zoom. If you have physical disabilities and we needed, and instead of admitting we're not doing a great job, we're going to do what we can to make it up. The district just feels like they have to kind of either be use such legalese or just say, we're doing a great job. And I'll hopefully not the first to admit, but I will continue to admit that we have a long way to go to serve our students well, and we did not do the best job with students with disabilities over the last 20 months. And that's not a culpability. It's just an acknowledgement. And I think that's the first step in saying we do have work to do, and we need to figure out how to make it up to those students and families academically, but also social emotionally. And that's something I know that Superintendent Carvalho is committed to as well.
I really want to thank you for saying that. I really think that the most basic step that LAUSD can take is saying, hey, okay, here's some wins, because you never want to just show up and say it's all terrible, but we have a lot of work to do, and we want to hear from parents and families and students to hear more about what kind of work you think we need to lean into. But the second they take that step, that they'll be laying down a foundation of trust and collaboration and just rolling up their sleeves and getting the job done, instead of saying, hey, this is great, this is great, this is great. Oh, something wrong there? No, nothing to see there, which is kind of what I keep seeing at a lot of presentations. All due respect for the hard work of our SPED administrators, but
and I think it has
a little more realness there.
Yeah, and I think, Lisa, it has to come from the top, because our staff have to be empowered to know that they're allowed to say, like, we're not doing the best job without it and I don't have insight into some of the day-to-day operations, but I know that there's so many good actors in the system who are working hard, and I think the fear is that if they admit fault, or not even fault, if they admit that there's room for improvement, that goes up the chain, and somehow we need to create the culture. I love this quote, culture eats strategy for breakfast. We need to change the culture to be more inclusive and accommodating, because that's going to trickle down to our work with parents.
I was actually speaking with a USC professor. She has a doctorate degree in educational leadership, and she was talking about how the teaching profession, and I'm going to lump in administrators into this too, because they started out as teachers, are actually in crisis because they're always taught that they have to be the experts, and they're not allowed to be learners. And if they're not allowed to be learners, then they're never allowed to make mistakes or be wrong. And then we get stuck, so what you're saying is really resonating with me and with what she was telling me. I think there needs to be a real shift in that. We have to really allow for that realness of like, okay, we're not getting this right and we're working on it. And this is, and now we're going to problem solve and strategize and be transparent about that and join us in this. And let's talk through this together. But we do have a comment from Allison Hertog. She's curious to know about the success centers in Miami and for students with disabilities.
Yes, and thank you, Allison. And I'll admit, you probably know more, given your recent transfer, than I do. This is something that I was definitely interested in learning about when I asked specifically in the last 48 hours our superintendent designee about his work with disabilities. So I can't speak to that as much because especially with the inclement weather today, I've suggested that I take an exploratory trip to Miami in the next few weeks to go see the work that he's been doing. So I'm happy to circle back there, or I know that he looks forward to the opportunity when he takes the helm in the coming months to join this group and to address that directly. So happy to learn more, and would like to learn more myself. I know in talking to him, it's something that he's highlighted and wanted me to mention, but I don't know the specifics of it given my lack of context in Miami.
So she asked her that she doesn't know either. So it sounds like
she's been
figure it out.
Definitely.
You guys should set up a meeting with Carvalho while you're there, and I'd love to be a fly on the wall there. So what else? Another question from Allison. Do you think it would help reduce litigation if there were higher level administrators at IEP meetings?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I'm looking for all ways to reduce litigation. One, because I just don't think that adversary, and I say this as a lawyer, I don't think that adversarial posture makes a lot of sense. It works in certain contexts, but like this idea that let's just battle it out and truth will emerge for kids, and the time that takes and the expense is silly. And the expense is the second part. So I've asked our independent analysis unit and others, and I think we're still waiting on some of those data pulls, but to look at just from a cost perspective, what is the cost of litigation and of due process? And wouldn't that be much better used just on the front end of meeting the needs of students?
Well, so I do think, I submitted a PRA request some time ago to the Office of General Counsel, not to the Office of Finance, sorry, and asked how much is being spent in LAUSD on litigation and due process. And the numbers tripled, I think, between 2014 and 2019. So I was told by some administrators in response to that from the Division of Sped, well, it's not because there have been more cases necessarily, it's because the cost of the lawyers has gone up. But I was never able to figure out really what those numbers truly represented. But all I know is that the cost is astronomical. And
it may be a both. I'm looking for that same information. It may be a both and like lawyers, and again, no knock to them. I say this as one, like they add to the cost of everything. I mean, and
they're expensive.
without even the normative comment about like whether they deserve more or not. It's like it's a transaction cost. And so if we can remove that, and that's why I've suggested, to some avail, but we need to do more with these ideas of like parent ambassadors or parent navigators. Like if we could attach someone who is a parent advocate within the district, it would just be so much easier, because I have been, and some parents have even reached out who aren't in my district, but who have just had such frustration with in the email chains of just all they're trying to do is get a good placement or get an answer. And it's just not the way to interact with our partners.
I agree. I think there should be like a parent in chief, parent relations in chief, or I think we've talked in the past about the possibility of, and this was pre-COVID when we got, and then we got sidelined by COVID, but an ombudsman who can oversee um, trainings for special ed across the district and connect parents and administrators and something to really smooth those relationships more and really make the IEP team function in a way that they're really coming together for the kid rather than fighting and saying, okay, fine, let's just take it to due process. So
Exactly.
let's keep thinking about that. Now, hopefully, as we emerge from COVID, we can start instead of just treading water and surviving. And I'm grateful to all of us who've been able to survive. But now, hopefully, we can get back into really raising the bar. But speaking of, another exciting piece that has to do with special ed that emerged in the past week was the resolution that was unanimously passed by you and your colleagues at the school board. And it advocated for increased funding for I.D.E.A, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. For those of you out there in Facebook land who are not aware, when the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act was written into law decades ago, the federal government made a commitment to providing 40% of the cost of special ed to each state. So it was mandating all these things. You have to provide the kid with all these supports. But it was also saying, we'll send you the money. We'll send you 40% of your costs every year. And they still haven't done that. At best, they've sent 15%. So I was very excited about Board President Gomez's resolution, the fact that you all passed it. And to boot, the synchronicity is quite perfect because President Biden and Education Secretary Miguel Cardona are also proposing increased funding, a 20% increase of funding for I.D.E.A. So if Congress passes that, it would be a beautiful thing. So tell me, Nick, what are your thoughts? What would happen if we had full funding?
Yeah, so I will. It is exciting, but and all credit to Ms. Gomez and the board. At the same time, this is something I think we've passed or like every year for the last four, because as you said, Lisa, I mean, this has been an unfunded mandate for decades.
Right.
The federal government currently reimburses about 13% of the costs. It's never reached above 15 or 20%. And the I.D.E.A shortfall last year nationally was $23.5 billion of money that has been promised to states and more importantly to students that has never made it their way. And so it leaves us with a huge shortfall. An encroachment is how the district usually refers to it, because we are providing services that we're mandated to provide by federal law. We're not reimbursed, and so money comes out of the general fund. And so if the federal government provided full funding of I.D.E.A, like promised, we would receive approximately $180 to $200 million a year in additional funding. I'll say that again, about $200 million a year in additional funding, which would make a huge difference for our school and our students. And like you said, I understand, when I got elected to this board in 2017, we had a different national climate. Despite bringing resolutions and writing letters on full funding, we didn't have high hopes. But now with a Democratic administration and two houses of the legislature both controlled by Democrats, there really is no excuse. And I would ask all of us, as effective as you are at advocating to your local school board for things that are important, join us as we advocate to our local members of Congress, although our congressional delegation in LA is pretty strong on this, to insist that we get a full funding of I.D.E.A, especially at this time when we have infusions of resources. So, LA Unified has over 60,000 students with disabilities, which represents just over 13% or so of the population. And full funding of I.D.E.A would mean more targeted services and programs for these students. It would help us increase student achievement, graduation rates, post-secondary enrollment rates. It would help fund a lot of the services that we've talked about, tonight. So it would be huge, and I do think there's a real window here, a real window of opportunity given the political climate.
I think it would be beautiful. Are there any particular programs that you would like to see expanded if there were more funding?
Well, I think, and our superintendent designee talked about this morning, like there's a huge need for more early childhood opportunities for all
Mhm.
students and some parent education and outreach. I think this idea of parent navigators or ombudsman is really crucial. I think training, I've been a big proponent of training our general ed teachers in how to support students with special needs, whether that's a
Yes.
micro-credential, something you probably heard me talk about a bunch, a micro-credential, as a general educator, when I was a middle school teacher, I had, a little training in my credentialing program, but I would have really benefited from more targeted support. I remember in my second year teaching, I had a BII in a classroom and also paraprofessional, and I was never given any training on like who this person is, how to work with this person. Are they there just for behavior? Are they there just as And so I think I would really like to invest, and it's a great use of one-time funding, which we have too, because it's not necessarily ongoing, but training for general educators. I'd like to see us expand our inclusion pilots. We've had a request for more APEISs that support students with special needs. And then again, better training for our general educators, but also for our paraprofessionals, our BIIs, and others. So there's a lot I think we could do with that.
I love that idea of the micro-credentialing process because, I mean, essentially what we have is most people are pushing towards inclusion. It's a value for many to include students with learning differences, and with disabilities into the general education classroom. It's sort of the foundation of I.D.E.A. Yet general educators are not given the support to know how to meet these kids' needs. So it really it's a lose-lose situation. So I love that idea. And how would parents be able to get behind that? Is there anything that we can do with parent power to help make that happen?
Yeah, I think, and my office can be in touch too, because I think even without the full funding of I.D.E.A, this idea, the district at our urging has really expanded their micro-credentialing programs. We've done it for um, online learning. We did it for most of our teachers last school year, or actually, I guess the school year before last, as we went into the pandemic. And we've thought about it for trauma. We've thought about it for dual immersion. And I think this is some real advocacy that can be done with our new superintendent and through HR. And so parents can reach out, they can write letters, and we can start to put together the curriculum for this micro-credential.
That sounds fantastic. And I think there are some follow-up conversations in order, and you may be getting a flurry of emails after this Facebook Live responding to this,
Great,
um,
I hope so.
and from parents watching. And in terms of full funding for I.D.E.A, how can parents support the district in advocating for this?
Yeah, well, so our Office of Government Relations, led by the very talented Martha Alvarez, in collaboration with other partners, is advocating for this. Parents can help us by contacting your congressional representatives. You can go to congress.gov to see who represents you. And I have asked, I think at every board meeting where we talk about our advocacy priorities, for some sort of online resource click campaign for parents to be able to, through the LA Unified website, hit on our advocacy priorities. That has not come to fruition, but I think Martha and her team are working on it, meeting through Sped Up and others, demanding meetings with our congressional delegation in town. You don't have to go to Washington. You can do it over Zoom now, but like their district offices, whether that's Senators Padilla and Feinstein or our congressional delegation. There's a lot of great congressional leadership, including Adam Schiff, who are in the LA delegation and have been leaders on this issue.
Okay, very helpful to know. My wheels are turning, and whirring and clicking. So we have some great comments in the chat. Miss Harry James O'Kelly, she says, "Hi, Nick and Lisa. This is great. What do you think about changing the education model from a full inclusion to a strength-based model? We have found that made a big difference in our 2E kids' success."
Yes. Well, hi, Harry. It's great to I guess I can't see you, but hear from you. And yes, you and others are such advocates for our Twice Exceptional, our 2E program, and strength-based work. We've seen it succeed at Portola and others, and I'm a big advocate for this. I think there are benefits to students with exceptional needs and typically developing students and others. We see it across the board. So I think that you're right to call this out, and the more we can do for for strength-based programs, and some of the lessons that we learned from our 2E, our twice exceptional programs, that are applicable to all schools. Some of the stuff that I love at Portola is not only the quality of instruction, but the sensory room. We are seeing so many challenges with student mental health as we return from this pandemic, and some of the things that we did specifically for those students when it comes to that room where you can go and center yourself, ground yourself. There's again the sensory room, but a lot of different opportunities for kids to check in, are things that we should be doing at all schools. And so appreciate you mentioning that, because I think the strength-based model is one I am fully behind.
Perfect. And then Berenice Miron commented, the truly sad expense is the students' school careers. So much time is wasted waiting for resolution, which doesn't even make sense. The district often asserts that a student doesn't need a service, but you can get it if you file for due process. Right. And stating some truth here.
Yeah. Yep, and then these are something that Lisa, we've worked together on, and that we need to continue to do more to kind of go from this adversarial model to figure out how to serve students' needs on the first step.
And we have from Kelly Coleman, another amazing advocate. Yes to gen ed teachers being trained in special ed, working with BIIs, et cetera. And the training needs to be communicated to parents so that parents know that our teachers are being supported in order to best serve our students. Right. So increasing family trainings, I think.
Yeah, and this was one, I don't know if folks watched our press conference, but when asked by the press, what are the 3 kind of major initiatives he wants to bring, or what are the top few initiatives, one of the ones that Superintendent Carvalho highlighted was real, true parent engagement, two-way parent engagement, parent empowerment, putting money behind it, really working with parents as the first teachers, as their advocates. And so I look forward to that rollout. But that's been something that he's really demonstrated. And in the few minutes that he had today to kind of share his vision, that was near the top.
I really love that idea, because when you hear from the parents, then you get the real picture of what's going on. And then we have from Pam, I am a fan of both of you. Thank you, Pam. I love you. How do we get added supports, including social skills and vocational skills for our kids?
Yeah, and this was also something that Superintendent Carvalho talked about today. I mean, I think that, and he said it quite articulately. I mean, the pendulum, as it often does in areas of public policy, often swings. And so I think when there was an acknowledgement that kids were being tracked, and that kids, based on where they lived or what they looked like, were being tracked, we moved back and we really took a more inclusive approach to kids being college ready. But the pendulum, I would argue, moved a little too far in that direction, and really negated a lot of the career technical education that we hear a lot from parents. And so this is something the superintendent said today, and I believe firmly that we need to be very careful that this is the choice of the child and the family, and not the system of which track you go into. And that's why it is not an either or, but a both and. But we need to have great career technical education pathways for students who want to look into other options. There are high paying, 6-figure salaries that don't require a college education. But there's also this false belief that doesn't mean you need to do well in high school. I remember when I first got elected, I toured the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers facility. In order to be an electrician, you need a C or better in high school algebra. So it's not like, I can drop out of school and go get a high-paying job. It's right. You still need to be on an academic career path. And we also need to work with students to do that career planning. I brought a resolution that the board passed unanimously a few months ago that requires students, in order to graduate, to fill out a post-graduation plan that has them think about 2-year college, 4-year college, career, military, and the idea of giving them of students a diploma without a real commitment to what they're going to do beyond that. I think we have to be more expansive in what we're preparing kids for. So I really do think that these career technical education programs that we're starting to see, we just completed a $150 million remodel of Venice. We've got some great new shop classes there and opportunities, and partnerships with our Division of Adult and Career Education are crucial as well.
That sounds fantastic. Well, I will just say one more thing about fully funding I.D.E.A. that I would say that I think it's something everyone can get behind. I would also add, though, that parents would want to make sure that they know where the money is going, that they be part of the decision-making process of the allocation of those funds. I think that would be really key. With that, we would just go for it. We'd, throw our whole weight behind it.
Great. Well, one of my first resolutions that I brought to the board was the open data portal that now has, transparent budget data. We still need to make it more parent friendly. I'll be the first to admit, but it's there for that very purpose. And we do want to be true partners with parents when it comes to the spending. And I think those are fair guardrails to put on that advocacy. But first, we do need to advocate, and we need to get those resources. So I appreciate everyone's support in advocating. There's also, I will say, necessary advocacy at the state level. So maybe our next conversation, Lisa, can be about that and about equitable funding versus equal funding, especially for districts like LA Unified that serve a higher than average population of students with moderate to severe disabilities, but don't get the requisite funding. So work in Washington first, but then we got to go to Sacramento, because with the Democratic supermajority, there's also no excuse for the underfunding of special education at the state.
I agree. So
great.
Thank you. It looks like we're on time. We're even a minute past. I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your advocacy. And this is only the beginning. I think there's so much room here for more conversations, more advocacy. And
there definitely,
if you want to give any last thoughts?
No, there definitely is. I just want to wish everyone a very happy holiday. Stay safe, get vaccinated if you have not, and really look forward to welcoming students back in January. There's a lot of work to be done, but I think it's an exciting moment for our school district and by extension our city. I think the last 20 months have impressed upon many folks how crucial our public schools are to the success of the community. We just announced at our board meeting today that we're going to be continuing our grab and go food program at various dates over the course of winter break. But we still have unfinished business when it comes to our students with disabilities. And you have my commitment to continue that work, and look forward to bringing our new superintendent out into the community to meet parents and continue the conversation. So thank you all for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Nick. We'll speak soon.
Great. Bye, everyone.
Bye.